Classified crime is on the case of Sarah Boone and her phone call shenanigans. So let's take a look at her March phone call logs. Okay, so we left off with March. And on March 1st, she had her last call with Lana for 3 minutes, 3 seconds. And it says the inmate hung up there. And then that was the only call she made on the 1st. On the 2nd, she called Peter, talked for 19 seconds. She called him again later in the afternoon, talked for about 2 minutes. And then she called Peter again a couple hours later, and they talked for half an hour. Then she called her son, and they talked for about 18 minutes. Her son again, they talked for a brief 39 seconds. And then I don't know who this person was. It could have been Steve, but it was not accepted. And then we have on the 3rd, she called S several times. So this person, I was not able to figure out whose phone number this is. Their name started with an S. She called this person 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, all on the 3rd. None of them were accepted. And then down here, that was on the 3rd as well. And then someone with the first initial E, I don't know who that was either. And those were not accepted. So she called some mystery people a lot on the 3rd. Someone named Adam, and she talked for 5 minutes and then her time was up. And then on the 3rd, she called her son. And they spoke for the full 30 minutes. And then she called her son on the 5th, and they spoke for 20 minutes. Julian on the 7th, they spoke for 4 minutes. Julian on the 8th, they spoke for 28 and a half minutes. Peter on the 8th, not accepted. Her son on the 8th, about 5 minutes. On the 9th, she tried Brian, not accepted. And then 2 minutes later, she called Brian again, not accepted. She called Nicole, not accepted. And then she called her son again, and they spoke for about 30 minutes on the 9th. She called her son on the 9th, and she hit her pin limit, so there was no duration there. On the 10th, she called Julian for 5 minutes. Brian, not accepted. Brian, not accepted. Brian, not accepted. So that was 2 1 minute apart. Those are all on the 11th. And then later on in the afternoon on the 11th, she talked to Brian for 3 minutes and her time was up. Probably asking him to add funds so she could make more calls and harass him. And then let's see, on the 11th, she called her son after talking to Brian, and they spoke for about half an hour. Peter, not accepted. Julian, 13 minutes. Peter. So the next 5 calls were all Peter. Hit her pin limit. Peter hung up after they talked for 17 minutes, and then not accepted. Oh, these are on the 12th. I'm sorry. She started with Peter on the 12th. Not accepted. Julian, not accepted. Then she called Peter again on the 12th, and they talked for 23, almost 24 minutes. She called Peter on the 13th. Not accepted. Peter on the 14th. Not accepted. Julian on the 14th. They talked for almost 7 minutes. Nicole on the 15th. They talked for a full half hour. And then her son on the 15th. Not accepted. Then we have on the 15th, her son, not accepted. about 2 in the afternoon. On the 16th, she started with Nicole. Nicole is supposedly from Australia and one of the flying monkeys that helped Sarah do her research and harassing her lawyer and things of that nature. They talked for 30 minutes until her time was up. Then she called Peter, not accepted. Julian talked for 17 minutes, and then Julian hung up. On the 16th, she then called Peter again. They talked for almost 30 minutes. She called Peter again. They talked for 16 more minutes. She called Peter again. They talked for almost 30 minutes. So they talked for like an hour that day, an hour and a half. Oh, here it is again. 16th, 23 minutes, and then Sarah hung up. So Peter, she talked to for about 2 hours that day. And then her son on the 16th, not accepted. Her son again, not accepted. Always with the 2 minutes apart. Yeah, they're not available. Then she, 2 more minutes after that, tried Brian and talked to him for 7 minutes. Probably asking why her son's not picking up. Because this is almost 5 o'clock, so they could have been having dinner or something of that nature. So she's probably like, why is he not picking up? All right. And then someone with the last name Gaines, 904 area code, on the 17th, and they talked for 5 minutes. And then on the 17th, we have Peter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a row. So all the next calls on the sheet are Peter. From here, Peter, they talked for 18 minutes, 7 minutes. No time, no time, no time, no time, no time, and then 30 minutes. So it looks like she hit her limit and needed more funds here and here. And then it was not accepted back to back. It's like, notice she called him at 3 in the afternoon, then 4:30, and then 5 o'clock, 5:03, 5:05, 5:08, 5:09, 5:11, 5:12. It reminds me of a Destiny's Child song. I'm sure you know the one I'm thinking of. And then they talked for about 30 minutes. And then on the 18th, she started with Peter, not accepted. He probably had enough of you the day before. And then Julian, it was Julian's time to take a turn on the 18th, 13 minutes. And then here we go with Peter. Let's see. These are on the 18th here. So she goes 18th. She talks to Peter for 8 minutes, 46 seconds. And then about a little over an hour later, she talks to him for about 30 minutes. And then not accepted. And then he hung up after 30 minutes on the 18th. So she called him 4 more times on the 18th. Then on the 19th, she calls Peter 1, 2 times. And then on the 20th, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So she's really burning up Peter's minutes here. So on the 19th, they talked for 13 minutes and then about 30 minutes. And then on the 20th, not accepted, not accepted, not accepted, not accepted. And then she tries her son on the 20th. And they talked for 19 minutes. 20th, then she calls her son again. I guess she had hit her limit, so they could not continue talking. Then she called her son again a minute later, but she already knows it was her pin limit because that's what happened 1 minute earlier. And then she calls her son again 2 minutes later, not accepted. 1 minute later, not accepted. And then she starts with Peter on the 20th. Oh, Peter again. 30 minutes. She called him a lot the past couple days. And then Peter on the 21st, not accepted. Then immediately to Julian on the 21st, 2 minutes later, not accepted. Someone named Danielle, not accepted on the 21st. Christina Pena is back in the picture with a new phone number. but the call was still not accepted on the 21st. Peter on the 21st, Peter on the 21st. They talked for about 5 minutes each time. Then Nicole on the 22nd. They talked for 22 minutes until her time was out. On the 22nd, she then calls Peter. It's interesting that every time you see time up, which I think it means she ran out of funds, she calls Peter immediately after that, probably to get him to add funds. I did request her commissary log so we can correlate these and see if he's giving her money every time it's time up. So that is pending. That's in the works. All right. Peter on the 22nd for about 30 minutes. Peter again for about 6 minutes on the 22nd. Peter again, not accepted on the 22nd. Peter again, about 30 minutes on the 22nd. Peter again on the 23rd for about 30 minutes. Peter on the 23rd for 30 minutes, an hour and a half later. Peter on the 23rd for 30 minutes, an hour later. And then Peter on the 23rd for 30 minutes, an hour later. So that's a total of about, this is on the 22nd. So that's 2 hours on the 23rd that she talked to Peter kind of back to back at 11, noon, 1:30, and 2:45. All right. Then she goes to her son, not accepted on the 23rd. Her son again, not accepted. 2 minutes later. Her son again, not accepted. 2 minutes later. Her son again, and they talked for about 30 minutes. And then her son again, and they talked for about 28 minutes, all on the 23rd. So she started trying her son about 4:45, 47, 49, and then she got a hold of him at 5:41, and then she called him again at 6:50 p.m. And I am including this little calendar to the right so you can kind of see if it might be a school day or not when she's calling her son. I started that on the last video because someone in the comments pointed out she sure was calling her son a lot, and it seemed like it might be on school days or school times. So I did put a little calendar there so you could see if it was a weekday. And you can see here these free calls are usually on the weekend. All right, so she calls Peter on the 24th with a free call, not accepted. Peter on the 24th for about 4 minutes, 45 seconds. And then Peter again hit her pin limit on the 24th. Then we have on the 24th, Peter. She hit pin limit. Peter again, pin limit. Peter again on the 24th. They talked for just under 2 minutes. Peter again on the 24th, not accepted. Peter on the 24th, not accepted. Peter on the 24th. Peter hung up after just under 9 minutes. So she called him quite a bit on the 24th. And then we went to Julian on the 24th. They talked for a little over 20 minutes. And then Peter again on the 24th, pin limit. Peter again on the 24th, pin limit. Peter again on the 24th, pin limit. Peter again on the 24th, not accepted. And then she starts calling her son on the 24th, not accepted. Then she talked to her son for 8 minutes, 16 seconds. Then she called her son again, not accepted. And then again, her son, she talked to him for just under 30 minutes on the 24th. She was very active on the 24th, which was a Monday. And she called Peter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, then Julian, then Peter 10, 11, 12, 13 times. She called Peter 13 times on the 24th. Okay. And then after her son, on the 25th, she started in with Peter. They talked for 24 minutes. On the 25th, Peter again, they talked for 30 minutes. On the 25th, Peter again, they talked for just under 30 minutes. And then on the 25th, she called her son, not accepted, called him again, not accepted, and called her son again, not accepted. 2 minutes apart each time. On the 26th, she started in with Peter, not accepted. 26th, again, Peter, not accepted. Then Julian on the 26th, she hung up after about 30 minutes. And then she calls Peter on the 26th. They talk for 3.5 minutes. And then she calls Peter again on the 26th and twice and hit the pin limit. And then Peter again on the 26th, and they talked for 30 minutes until their time was up. She then on the 26th called her son, and they spoke for just under 30 minutes. And then she called Nicole on the 29th. So she didn't have any phone activity for a few days. Then she called Nicole on the 29th. They spoke just shy of 30 minutes. And then her son on the 29th, they spoke for under 1 minute. And then her son again, they spoke for about 18, 19 minutes. And then on the 30th, she called Nicole and spoke for about 30 minutes twice that day at 8:30 in the morning and then close to 10 a.m., 9:49 a.m. She spoke to Nicole again for about half an hour. She then called her son on the 30th, not accepted. Her son again, not accepted. On the 31st, she called her son and they spoke. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. She spoke to her son on the 30th, not accepted, then called him a minute later and spoke for 7 minutes, 28 seconds. I'm sorry. Then she called her son on the 31st and they spoke for just under 5 minutes. She called him again on the 31st, not accepted. And then again, 2 minutes later, not accepted. She then called Christina Pena again on the 31st, not accepted. And she called her brother, not accepted. 2 more calls for the 31st. She called her brother again, 2 minutes later, not accepted. And then Christina Pena again, not accepted. So that is the end of March. And we'll total those up here. So here we have Julian. She called 11 times. He accepted 9 of those for 82% acceptance rate. Peter, she called 71 times, the most of anyone by far. And he accepted 35 of those for a 49% acceptance rate. Her brother, she called twice. He did not accept, so 0% of the time acceptance rate. Christina, she attempted 3 times and got a hold of her 0 times, so 0% acceptance rate. Brian, she called only 7 times the month of March, and he only accepted 2 times. So that's a 29% acceptance rate, but I am very proud of Brian. Her son, she called 37 times. He accepted 16 times for a 43% acceptance rate. And all others combined, she attempted 21 other phone calls. 9 were accepted for 43% acceptance rate. For those of you who are still with me this far in the video, thank you for that. And I have a little treat. So I looked at the amount that these phone calls should be costing Sarah. So I did a few little calculations. So first, you can see this is from the Florida DOC website, Inmate Telephone System. And it shows that how to set up your account if you want to fund someone or connect with them. But what was interesting to me is the charges. So deposit fee per funding event for prepaid calls. So every time you fund the account, there's a minimum 99-cent charge fee just to add the money. And then the per minute rate is 13.5 cents per minute. International calls is based on the going rate at the time. But if they want to leave a voicemail, incoming voicemails from friends and family, it's 13.5 cents per minute. Telephone rate, 13.5 cents. It says, are there any free communication options? Yes. Every inmate gets 2 free 5-minute phone calls per month. The free calls are applied to the first 2 calls made by the inmate at the time the free calls are provided. So earlier I just thought it was like free on the weekends or something. No, it's 2 free 5-minute calls per month. And so the first 2 calls the inmate makes at the beginning of the month are the free calls. So something interesting to go back and look and see who she called first each month for her 2 free calls. And call duration. So it says the previous contract they had, a different company had a 15-minute call limit. So now they can have calls up to 30 minutes in length. So that's why whenever it hits 30 minutes, the call ends. 30-minute waiting period between each completed call per inmate. So that's a little insight for us there. So if they complete a call, they have to wait half an hour. So that might be why she's not calling every 2 minutes when a call ends, because she can't. And then other fees, there's a small fee per transaction. So I think that's the 99 cent. Fees can be reviewed prior to completing a transaction. This fee works much like any other bank fees and is only charged with a prepaid account. Collect calling has no deposit fee and is offered at the same per minute rate. So collect calling, whoever you're calling is paying the 13.5 cents per minute. So when we go back and look at Sarah's total amount of 87 hours, 5 minutes, and 6 seconds of talk time from the time she's been at Lowell in January until the end of May when this phone call log ended. So 87 hours times 60 minutes in an hour. So that's 5,220 minutes plus 5 more minutes. And if we multiply that times 0.135, nope, that wasn't 0.135. I didn't take my decimal point the first time. These phone calls have cost a total of $705.37.5 for 5 months of phone calls. So that just gives you kind of a ballpark for how much this is costing someone, not Sarah, someone. Looks like mostly Peter. That does not take into account the 10 minutes of free calls she got per month. So January, February, March, April, May is 5 months times 10 minutes. We could have subtracted 50 minutes. So 5,225 minutes minus 50 and multiply that times decimal. Take my decimal this time. 135. So roughly still just under $700, not that much difference. Now, I also wanted to let you know that I have requested some more public records from the state of Florida on Sarah Boone. So inmate behavior log and report from the date of incarceration at Lowell to the present date. So we'll see if there's any kind of misbehavior going on or negatives earned. Inmate commissary log, including funds added and items purchased. More phone logs from the date of incarceration to the present date, so we can have an updated phone log for the months beyond May. Any other available communication records, including digital communication that is available to the public from the date of incarceration to the present date. Because last time they told me email and JPay messages weren't available. I also requested this on another inmate. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it is someone who had their trial right before Sarah's trial started. They're from the state of Florida. They're also incarcerated at Lowell Annex. They're also serving life. This inmate also used battered spouse syndrome and self-defense, and used the services of Dr. Julie Harper as their expert, but they never ended up having Dr. Julie Harper testify in this trial. So there are a lot of commonalities between her and Sarah, and she's at Lowell Annex. So I requested these records from her as well, just to see if there's anything kind of interesting. And I also thought about reaching out to her. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I also thought about reaching out to her and just see if she knows Sarah and if there's any kind of commentary she would like to provide. She will probably not respond, but doesn't hurt to try. So thank you so much for watching, those of you who are still watching, and hopefully you enjoyed those little tidbits. I'm going to start putting those at the end of the video because some people tune out really quickly if I'm just talking about stuff that isn't what the title is about in the beginning of the video. So I'm going to start adding these little tidbits to the end for those of you who do watch to the end. And you can kind of know what I'm working on, what's coming up, and just kind of have an idea of what direction I'm thinking of going in, and add your comments and feedback in the comment section. So as always, thank you so much for watching.